We're here to lift people up and also to entertain.
There's so much to talk about anytime when it comes to Amaranth, but I want to even very quickly go beyond Amaranth, because the very first time that I saw you on a stage was all the way back with Dragonland in Antwerp in Belgium, and I think it was like the early 2000s.
Really?
Were you opening for, I don't know if it was early Sabaton or Ailstorm or something like that, but it was
Sabaton. It was, I don't remember the name of the festival, but you're right. It was the then called Hofterlo.
Yeah.
2006, I would like to say. I'm trying to, I'm piecing back the memories together, because we toured with Sabaton back in 2020.
Right.
And then we kind of just suddenly remembered that, we have played before.
Yeah.
Because we obviously met in Sweden throughout the last couple of decades. But then I got this memory that already back then they were a much smaller band, of course.
Right.
But they were really taking it seriously, so everybody got really impressed when they were rolling in their props and stuff. So good times. Cool that you were there.
No, for sure. And Dragonland also returned out of, the darkness, let's say, in 2022 at a new album. Yep. So you had maybe a little bit more free time on your hands in those years than you have now with Amaranth, because it's all, full speed ahead with you guys. But just as a fan asking, what can we keep our eyes open for and fingers crossed for now that you have to focus on Amaranth for Dragonland?
Well, the problem is, of course, quite obvious that I'm keeping busy with this band like all the time. And I'm really happy. I mean, as you point out, obviously there was the whole COVID situation.
Right.
So I did have the time to I wasn't as much part of the writing process as the previous albums, where I was everywhere, basically. But I did manage to put my how should I say, my touch on it, for sure, and record all the guitars and the guitar solos together with the other guitar player, Jesse. So, but in terms of the live stuff, it's always gonna be a little bit different. Because even if there's times where I'm technically not on the road, Dragonland played a show a month back at the Underworld together with Dynasty.
Yeah.
So obviously Nils, our singer in Amaranth, was available for it, but I was just finish up an album and just getting ready for this tour. So I have told the guys that it's better that you run with this live guitar player. Really nice guy called Stuart from a great English band called Ascension.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what they're doing right now, but I'm still hoping that they were stars will align every now and then. So my ambition is to every now and then take part of it, but so far it just hasn't been practically possible.
Now you mentioned everybody was impressed with Sabaton in those early days because even if they were small, they had a vision, they were prepared, they were planning. Is it fair to say that you adopt that same mentality for Amaranth? Because it always has felt to me on the outside that Amaranth had a plan, knew what they were doing, and it was clear to everybody involved. Is that a fair statement?
I mean, that's the way that I like to think about it.
Right.
And then obviously when we were trying to put things on a higher level with this band than any of our previous bands, like the people who started it, it's always going to be the question of you're going to have to figure out things as you go.
Yeah.
Even if you can get some great advice from other people in the business, not the least. Swedish metal scene is full with people who are actually very willing to share their experiences, their thoughts and ideas. Sabaton being definitely one of those. But we were very ambitious from the get-go. And I think the whole basic concept of having, the chicken before the egg, like Sabaton back in those days, that's definitely what we were consciously trying to do at the very least. Like our very first video, Hunger, we wanted to for that to appear a lot bigger than it actually was, with pulling some favors and just try to amp things up as much as possible. But sooner or later you're going to hit some roadblocks, and then you're going to have to be a little bit more realistic about it.
Yeah.
And then you have to dial down your ideas. But I think now we're at the point, especially when we do this tour in Europe, when it's a co-headline tour, Now we are a little bit more limited in terms of stage size and production and whatnot. But then we are finally now at the position where we can creatively like do live what we've been already been doing in the music videos now for a long time. So it's gonna be really exciting.
A lot of bands are around today, some that you've toured with. I'm thinking of Beast in Black, not Beast in Black, sorry, Beyond the Black, for example, where that have adopted a similar some people will not consider it a compliment or a negative term, but the poppy metal, let's call it, with electronic influences, a very broad sound. A lot of people came a couple of years after you guys and were clearly inspired by that. We could almost call it Amaranth metal. Is it something that, I know you're busy, but do you have time to sit back, take a step back, and appreciate the legacy that you've been building now? Like, do you even realize that?
Fact of the matter is that correct answer to this would be no, actually, because it's really hard to see your own. Sometimes it's a little bit more clear than others. But when it comes to the bigger bands, I would say now, hypothetically, if they would have been influenced by us, they're smart enough to cover it up in a good way, so it will not be blatantly obvious.
And no disrespect to those bands, obviously. Yeah.
Obviously not. And I mean, there's a ton of great bands that are actually quite new in the scene, like you mentioned Beyond the Black, great band, and you also mentioned Beast in Black, which I personally think it's a fucking fantastic band.
Right.
And I mean, when it comes to when we started the band, which was all the way back in 2008, to do like these melodic choruses, unless you were a solo worker in Flames with a little bit of melody or a metalcore band, you weren't really doing these kinds of choruses. And obviously there was many exceptions, like Nightwish has always had like the big choruses and some power metal bands, but in the way that we were doing it was not popular at the time, let's say. And if there's any legacy that I think that we have had, is that we've done our little part. Hard to say how big part, but probably a little sizable little part to bring back those kind of choruses. Yeah. And you also mentioned the poppy keyboards and whatever, and sometimes I can tell that people are clearly inspired by it, and that I just find it like that's the greatest compliment that you could be getting. But in terms of a larger legacy, no, I mean, I think it's far too soon to say that. And it's probably also much clearer from the outside because I'm still obviously right in the middle of these things. But if we can have any kind of impact on the scene, that's always exciting, of course. Yeah.
You and Elize spoke about in a recent-ish interview that you guys have always talked about important and bigger things, but you cleverly used metaphor and storytelling to not put it too front and center. On the last album, there was a bit of a change there, where there were some messages that you wanted to take out there regarding climate change, for example. That was a little bit more, front and center, if you will. I think at the time you guys said like, we just feel like we've always felt like this, and now we feel like it's really time to say something. So we did. The world today is not necessarily magically all solved of its problems. So there's a new album coming out. From a storytelling perspective, what should we expect? Is that trend going to continue, or are you taking us in a different direction?
I think that's definitely something that's continuing. It's interesting that you pointed out, because I was just talking about it also, that I would say that the themes are more mature and they're a little bit more on the nose now than they used to be. So, but instead then saying that that's a new development, you're completely correct that it's a continuation of what we already did with Manifest. But I would say if there's any kind of theme for this album, the catalyst it's kind of self-evident in the title that it's about change. And it's about the catalyst. I mean, it can be on a macro perspective. It can also be on a micro perspective, in the sense that, let's say that it can be key points in relationships to other people, or it can be about your own creativity, for example. and how you want to change that and how you want to develop. But it can also be like on the really big perspective, like what kind of changes is the world going through, for example, because I think it's also an age thing. I mean, when you're a teenager or in your mid-20s, the world is self-evident to you. But once you've lived a few decades, then you have a different perspective on things. You have seen the world go from one thing to something where it's recognizably different. And I think dealing with those kinds of changes is always interesting, because a lot of our focus tends to be on the negative aspects, because that's who we are as human beings. We're programmed to be scared of change, obviously. But I come to find that a lot of the changes that the world has gone through have been vastly for the positive as well. And I will not go mention details, because these things can tend to sound a little bit political and whatever.
Right.
But I mean, if you want to focus on things that everybody can agree on, like much less starvation, education levels are higher in the whole world than they used to be, etc., etc. And then there are also some not good things, and we deal with those as well. But I think at the end of the day, one of the many things that I try to do, which makes us unique, is to have a positive spin on it. Because you literally have thousands of bands who are dealing with more depressing topics, let's say. And while we do that, we try to put a positive spin on it, like try to be uplifting. And it also matches the sound of our music at the end of the day. We're here to lift people up and also to entertain in itself, which is also important. So, but I feel like, the lyrics are more on the nose on this album, and it's going to be pretty evident what we're trying to say.
Last question before I let you go. People often say that the best stand-up comedians tend to be quite depressing in their personal life and not very happy. So does that mean that if you're on the road with bands like Nanowar and Dragonforce, that behind the scenes you guys are the most fun, really?
I mean, this is a fun bunch of people, it truly is. I mean, these Nanowar of Steel guys, only known them for 10 days, but I love them. We're like Italian people that I can discuss cooking with and wine every day. Fantastic people. Edge of Paradise, super down to earth, nice guys. And Dragonforce, I've known them for very many years. And now it's getting loud, but it's a really fun touring party, and it's fantastic to be out with these guys finally after all these years.
You are awesome for watching this video. Click right here to see more content like it and subscribe to the channel.